Today's host, Rosie Tanner. I work for Italic in the marketing department. If you haven't heard about us, we're an IT consultancy. We're based in West Yorkshire, that's the UK if you're not in the UK. So we specialise in online security. We do IT support, infrastructure, networking, app development, that type of thing. So if you do want to find out more about us, you can find us online, www.italic.co.uk. So I'm going to take my video off so you can see more of the slides. Yeah, so Mark Graham is an ISO standards and systems specialist from ISMS online, and he is our presenter for this webinar. Just before we begin, if you do have any questions that you'd like to raise during the presentation, there is a part on the control panel that you can ask questions, where it says questions. If you could just pop them in there, we'll happily answer them towards the end when we've got the Q&A session. So yeah, over to you, Mark.
Okay, thanks for that, Rosie. So good morning, everyone. ISO standard specialist, what does that mean? It means I've been playing with this stuff for far too long than is healthy, really. I can cite all the clauses and controls in the standards, inside out, back to front. I've worked for multiple cert bodies, including the biggest one in the UK. I was a tutor of this stuff for a number of years, so I've taught lead auditor courses, lead implementer courses, consulted in lots of ISO standards, obviously including this one. And really, I'm poacher turned gamekeeper. So yes, I know about the standard, but what's probably of more value is that I know how to use this stuff. I know the problems that you guys will have seen, and again, more importantly, know the answers. So I've also got 20 years background in IT, which is somewhat relevant, but I want to make sure that nobody really thinks that this is an IT-based standard, because it absolutely isn't. But we'll come on to that. Okay, so when people are looking at building their ISMS, if you don't have a platform for doing this thing, broadly, you're going to have lots of spreadsheets, lots of Word documents, and usually they're in lots of different places and in lots of different systems. So it can all become very messy very quickly. So there are two parts to this problem. Firstly is the sheer volume of these things and the interconnectivity of them, because for all the ISO standard is quite linear and one-dimensional in one way. In another way, once you get used to it and you understand it, you'll start to see connections all over the place. And I sometimes refer to it as a bit of a spider's web. But first things first, if we concentrate on doing the linear things, getting all the components that we need, then actually what we need is somewhere to bring them all together, particularly when there's an auditor, an external auditor, breathing down your neck at audit time. So yeah, lots of components to your ISMS. Now, make the problems go away. I think this poor guy on the slide here is very, very typical. In my experience, it's quite often dumped on people, this problem. You know what, we need to get ISO 27001. We need it by July. Please go away and get it done. And by the way, don't forget about your day job. So that's very, very typical, I think, of what happens. And people are like rabbits in the headlights, or a guy looking at mountains of documentation thinking, where do I start with this stuff? So again, other problems around this are people very often don't have a peer group, so they don't know who to talk to. They're not usually confident in what they're doing. They resort to online search engines, and I've got to say the quality of information that will come back when you do that, I think the polite phrase is very, very varied. So I'd be a little bit skeptical about what you find out there when you start using search engines. You probably need a little bit more certainty than that. The other thing, just while we're on this slide, is that if any of you are in any doubts, and again, I've seen umpteen customers that think this, gaining 27001 either to build your management system and certify or not certify it, there's some work involved, and it is absolutely not a tick box exercise like some of the other certifications that are out there. So I just want to make that clear, because again, some people go into this a little bit blind. Okay, so we've got some problems, but guess what? We've got some solutions as well. So we'll come on to those in a minute. Looking at this slide, and I'm not going to go into all the details on this. This session's been recorded, and so you can look at the detail at your leisure after we've finished here. But broadly, your ISMS, your Information Security Management System, consists of a number of different things. So 27001 is split into two, for those that don't know, and if you're obviously interested in this stuff, I'm not allowed to give advice, but I'm going to give you some advice. Get a copy of the standard. Also know that there are a couple of helper guideline documents, which is ISO 27002 and ISO 27003, and they'll be really, really useful for you. So definitely get a copy of the standards and learn to read them and understand them. They'll be your friends going forward. But 27001 is split into two. So if we look at the slide, we've got the orange bullets in the middle. We're looking at the first two orange ones, the controls and clauses. So the controls, and we'll come on to this, but the controls are essentially controls that mitigate risks, because ISO 27001, like we said earlier, is not an IT standard. Yes, there are quite a few IT elements in it, but if we look at the controls, for instance, there are 114 controls, and I would say probably around half of them are what we might typically give to the IT department to manage on behalf of our business or organization. But quite a few of them, like we're seeing on screen about human resources and legal and things like that, some of them are more kind of nebulous business controls as well. So truly, this thing needs to be kind of spread around your business, and let's not forget, it's about information, and information in all its guises. So documents, databases, IT systems, and other more nebulous things like your business reputation. So that's what ISO 27001 would call an information asset. So it's about looking for our assets, looking at the risks, and doing what we can to mitigate those risks. That's the gist of what 27001 wants you to do. The clauses, these clauses are about basically the structure of your management system. So these are the things that you need to make this stuff work. And this has evolved with other ISO standards in the last few years. So for those of you that don't know, if you've got other ISO standards, the bigger ones like 14001, 9001, 22301, actually a lot of the work that you may have already done or have to do, actually there is a lot of overlap between the more modern standards, and that's there's more detail in that, but just be reassured to know that actually your job, if you're going to go for multiple standards, is made much more easy. And that's one of the things with our ISMS online platform that we've really worked hard to make easy for people to implement and use. Okay, so moving on through that slide, yes, it's about IT security, but really it's about information security, and we'll talk a little bit more about the kind of detail in that in a minute. Certification, do you certify your ISMS or not? That's a decision for you guys to make. My advice, I'm not allowed to give advice, my advice would be, if you're going to go to all this time and trouble, why wouldn't you certify and get the external recognition, and probably in many cases as well the internal recognition that goes with having the not only the badge on the wall, but the reassurance to know that you've got a framework and a structure for doing things the right way and to protect your business, because that's really what this stuff is all about. It's about protecting your business. Okay, so that's slide 4. Slide 5, I don't intend to spend too much time on it, but I think you guys can read these and you're probably well aware of what your drivers are and why actually getting 27001 is good for you. I will say that 27001 is the fastest growing ISO standard in the world. It's not the biggest yet, 9001's the biggest, but it's fast catching up, let me tell you. And there's a couple of interesting points here, really interesting, because the star at the top right of the slide, the one about protecting and enhancing the reputation of your business, I think that's ultimately what this is all about. We don't like to scare people, but we all see the scare stories in the news about cyber breaches and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're at a point yet where we're becoming immune to the negative impact and fallout from this stuff. But you think about that. Nobody wants to go there with all the cost, time, trouble, and reputational impact that could cause you. So you've got your strategic drivers for getting 27001 at a more practical, tactical level. I'm sure a lot of you will face something that I've faced a lot of times over the years, and is a real ache, a real pain in the what's it, and that's people that send you big questionnaires that ask, umpteen questions about, what are you doing for security and all that kind of stuff. So this is very, very tactical, and it's clearly a bugbear of mine, but you know what? Anything that we can do to get rid of the need to fill in all these questionnaires is good in my book. I'd much rather just give them a 27001 certification, say, there you are, we're good. There's your reassurance. Okay, so what does getting this certification involve? Now, again, what I want to make sure that you know is don't ever use the word accreditation. So you get certification. Accreditation is different, and we'll come on to that in a later slide. We start at the top, the first green bullet. Actually, in practical terms, this is split into two. So it's a stage 1 and a stage 2 audit. So you build your ISMS. If you're going to certify, and as we've already said, I definitely would urge you to think strongly about that. You go through 2 audits. Your first one is a fairly cursory stage 1. Have you got all the components that the ISO standard says that you have to have? So for those of you that haven't looked at the standard yet, it's full of the word shall. So you shall do this, you shall do that. So it's very prescriptive in terms of what you have to have, but it's completely the opposite in terms of the detail, and that's absolutely by design. So what it's trying to do is make sure that you tailor your ISMS to fit your business whilst still adhering to the kind of structure, the framework that it wants you to stick to. So you go through a stage 1 once you've built your ISMS. Stage 2 is your big certification audit, and then you've got an ISO management system, and you keep the thing running. There's a kind of line that says an ISMS is for life and not just for Christmas, and most people view this as a very long-term commitment. A bit of a game changer for a lot of organizations, because you can go into it and do what you need to do to get the certification, or you can go into this and really go for it and make some real internal and maybe structural and cultural changes within your business. Again, the choices are yours, and if you want to talk to us or your consultant or whoever about those kinds of choices, then I'd urge you to do that before you actually start out on this journey. One thing, again, top tip at the bottom, I've seen a lot of people flounder with this thing because it's a bit complicated. You've got work to do. You've got to kind of cajole people sometimes to do their bits, and all the while, again, usually there's a deadline and there's an audit coming up and so on and so on. So a bit of momentum would be my absolute top tip here. Don't let this drift for years and years. How long does it take you to get certification, build your ISMS, get certification? Well, that'll depend on how big your organization is. It'll depend on how many locations you've got, how many staff you've got, what kind of business sector you're in. But broadly, I think certainly doable in under a year, and very often a lot less than that if you're totally committed and you want to really put some effort and drive into it. Okay, so what is this ISMS thing? So you'll sometimes hear stories about the documentation tree. So the ISMS is a number of different things, and you can read the things that are going on there, but you're going to need some people. You're going to need some systems. So a risk management tool is a good example, because we've already said 27001's all about risks, identifying them, managing them, controlling them, mitigating them. And we're going to need some policies. Now, policies, in my eyes, should be quite brief. So a bring your own device policy might be, we allow it or we don't allow it, maybe with a sentence or two that says why, and endorsed by somebody senior in the business. Now, underneath that policy, let's say we do allow bring your own device policy, that might refer to a procedure that says, okay, if you want to do that, you go and see the IT department and they'll put it in the asset tracking system and they'll put some special software on there, and they will do this and they will do that and they will do the other. So you've kind of got a hierarchy of documents and forms and policies and processes. Essentially, the ISMS is a series of processes, business processes, some of which you'll have already, and some of which you might not have. But regardless, you'll get them to a point where they operate reasonably well, very well in some cases, and they can be seen and tested to be working well. And crucially, what the standard wants you to do is actually turn all these activities, all these processes into business as usual activities. And if you do that successfully, you'll see a step change in what goes on in your business. So it really is something that can help your business, and you can tell I'm an evangelist for this stuff. Okay, ISO panic. So this is one of my favorite phrases. Now, yes, it's hard work to get your ISMS built, but actually there are lots of structures, and certainly in our product, it's all structured to help you get there, and we'll talk a bit about that soon. So getting the certification is hard, don't get me wrong, you've got to put some effort in. But what tends to happen is the hangover part that we're seeing on screen is the bit where everybody gets the certification and it says, whoa, right, yeah, well done, everybody. Tell you what, we'll just take a week or two and then we'll come back to it and then we'll pick it up again. And the week or two turns into 11 months, and all of a sudden you're facing your next or your first certification audit, and it's ISO panic ensues. So typical things that cause people to fail in their audit outcomes after after the ISMS has been certified are things like not keeping up with your internal audits, not keeping up with your corrective actions, not keeping up with your management system reviews. And it's kind of inexcusable, really, because really all that's happened is you've took your eye off the ball. The way we do it in our product is we have nudging mechanisms built into the product. So if it's almost as if you do that kind of thing, you've almost got to be willfully neglectful to kind of let this thing go the wrong way. So let's not even countenance that. We don't want that to happen. We're not going to let that happen. Okay, so I've already mentioned don't use the word accreditation, and there it is at the top of the slides. So your ISMS gets certified. If you as individuals go away and do a lead auditor or a lead implementer course, you will be certified. It's your cert body that gets accredited. Now, get this, who'd have thought, but there's an ISO standard for cert bodies, and it's ISO 17021. So behind the scenes, there's a complicated array of bodies and companies that have all got skin in this game, but you kind of don't have to worry about that. Your organization, assuming you certify, is going to have a good relationship with your cert body, with your auditor. Get yourself certified, get it out there. And I would always advise you to, shout from the rooftops, put it on your website, have a party when you get certification. It's all good. You've done some good work here, so why not reward people and tell people how good you've been. So your accreditation body, the big ones, and I'm not recommending any, BSI, SGS, BAB, Bureau Veritas, there's lots of them out there. One thing that's not on the slide, but is I'd urge you to think about strongly, is I'm going to just drop something in that some of you may not have heard of, but cert bodies are accredited in the UK by an outfit called UCAS, so that's UKAS, and I'd certainly urge you to think strongly about checking who your cert body is accredited with, because it's important. If this is a bit, if you're losing me a little bit at this point, don't worry about it. Get in touch after this webinar, and we can talk you through that in more detail, because you've got choices. Your accreditation body is a supplier just like any other supplier, and we'll kind of help you through those decisions. Okay, so what do you need to get there? You clearly need some discipline. Now, in my experience, a lot of organizations, even though they've got the capability, so they've got good people that know what they're doing, very often there's a confidence gap. So we're doing good stuff, but we're not actually sure if the stuff we're doing is as good as it could or should be. So really that kind of gap is where products, consultants, systems come into play. So it's entirely possible to do this stuff on your own, but I think the confidence gap is always there to a greater or lesser extent. So I would urge you, budget permitting, to kind of reach out to somebody and just get those fears, if they are there, get them allayed by talking to somebody that's done this stuff before. Capacity is sometimes an issue. Very often people are doing this stuff, building the ISMS, operating the ISMS, are doing it on a part-time basis, and very often their priorities are conflicted by the day job. So broadly speaking, these are the things that as an organisation that you'll need to address. Okay, complicated slide here. So those of you that know and have seen 27001 will see that column 2 and 3, they're actually the requirements of the standard. So the second column is the building blocks of your management system, the policies and controls. It's really controls in column 3, the middle column. So those, you can see these controls, and don't forget the controls for risk. So you could argue that these A12, if A13, all these Annex A controls, as they're known as, are categories of risk mitigators, because that's what these controls are. Okay, now clearly too much to go into detail on this slide, but what I will say is there's people ask about how am I going to manage this stuff as a project. Well, there's your project management methodology. Personally, I wouldn't go into too many Gantt charts and that kind of stuff. Essentially, to build your ISMS, you make sure you satisfy all the requirements in those clauses 4 to 10 and now those A5 to A18 with the other bits and pieces that are kind of noted in this slide. So this is one for you to take away and have a good look at and digest and go from there. Okay, so what have we got going on here? So clearly there's a process going on here. 27001's all about a process. The ISMS online platform has got some things built in, and we don't want this to be a product pitch, but we've got a virtual coach, which is kind of videos and content for helping you through this, so that helps attack the confidence gap. The assured results method is a way of building your ISMS. Now, your ISMS is lots of different components, and you can build them in any order you like. But we found if you follow our methodology, it'll get you to where you want to be. Service support wraps are kind of time with consultants and people doing maybe some of the internal audits for you and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on here. We're heading towards year 0. Year 0 is where we've got the ISMS built, and then we start and operate it, and we do our audits, and we do all our login. And broadly, what your ISMS is a series of documents that tells the organization what to do, how often to do it, and so on and so on. And essentially all the auditor's doing when the external auditor comes in is checking that you're doing what you say you're going to do. So bear that in mind. Don't make it too difficult for yourself. Similarly, don't make it too easy for yourself, because then are you really adding any value. Once you've got the certification, you will be facing a number of audits going forward. Generally no less frequent than yearly, sometimes a little bit more frequently than that, but again, a lot of variables there. Just know at this point that you will go through a series of audits. Okay, so we're nearly finished here. I've talked about ARM. Our product has got a lot of content in there in terms of policies and procedures and things which generally people want. But beware of anyone that offers kind of off-the-shelf policies and procedures, because we've already said you've got to make your ISMS fit your organization. So you've got some customization to do. Everybody's got different capabilities in terms of the structure of the business, in terms of resources, in terms of people. So you've got to make this thing fit your business. So buying off-the-shelf systems probably is not the best way to go. And we've talked about what virtual coach can do to you. It's built into the platform. It's there at every step in the structure of the ISMS. It will really help you attack the confidence gap if there is one. Right. If you choose us, we've got this fantastic system. Get in touch with our sales guys. They're really helpful. But one of the key things is actually we can provision the platform for your business in 24 hours, or as it says there, 24 hours. So we can get you up and running very quickly. My proud boast is I've never ever had a major non-conformance. So For those of you that don't really know what that is, it's basically something that says your ISMS isn't very good. Never had one, never going to have one. So yeah, please be assured by that. And we've got over 300 successful certifications with 27,001. Certified at first attempt. How about that? So that's pretty strong track record. I put it to you. Okay, so conscious of time, question time. So thank you very much for that. Right, let's see what questions we get. Rosie.
Hi Mark, thanks everyone. That was a great presentation and very helpful. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. Like you
Okay,
said, I'm quite conscious of time because we've overrun a little bit. I mean, I think we'll just go for the one question if that's okay. And then what
okay,
we'll do is we'll follow it up with an email and put them out on our social platforms as well. So people
okay.
can see if they've got, if anything is helpful for them. So
Great
how
idea.
do Sam says, how do I choose a certification body?
Oh, I've heard this one quite a number of times. So there are a number of factors involved. If you're a multinational company, so that's going to be one of your key factors because it's no use using a cert body that's only got capability in an individual company. So that's a big factor. You may already be using a cert body for another certification that you may have, so that's a factor. I've already talked about the importance of making sure the accreditation of your cert body is what you want it to be. And in the UK, my personal view is you want your cert body to be accredited by UCAS. So there are a number of different factors there. What you must be aware of as well is that no credible provider in the space that we work in will recommend a cert body. We'll talk about the factors that we've just talked about. We'll give you a list of cert bodies, and it's up to you as an organisation to pick one and form that relationship with them. They're a supplier to you, and nobody else in the space that we're in has any kind of formal relationship with a cert body because it's not allowed for independence.
Okay, thank you. We do have another question in. Sorry, we've run out of time. Like I said, I don't want you to be running late for the day, so
Hit,
we will
hit me
follow
with it.
these up in an email and on our social channels.
Yeah,
But yeah, if you do want to see what else we get up to, feel free to check us out on our social platforms. I think that's on the next slide,
yeah.
Mark.
There you
Thank you. And yeah, if you are interested in having a free demo with us, please do get in touch. You can email us info@italic.co.uk. We'll happily arrange something with you. And